Everyone knows the Dualsense Edge. It's a pro PS5 controller made by Sony themselves. But what if I told you it kind of sucks? And here's why. I've owned the Dualsense Edge for nearly 2 years. I've gamed on it for tens of hours, but I've also used 10 other pro PS5 controllers, so I have a lot to compare this to. And my first issue is the price. This controller costs $200, but in my opinion, it lacks quite a few pro features that should come at that price point. The pro features that it does have are interchangeable thumbstick caps that are pretty good. It has 2 back paddles which you can swap out for these buttons or these levers, and they feel alright, they feel good enough. And the last pro feature is trigger stops, but they're pretty disappointing. The cable lock feature is seemingly unnecessary, but what absolutely carries this controller is the replaceable thumbstick module. Stick drift has antagonized gamers for years, even decades at this point. So introducing a controller that has a $20 module to fix this instead of having to go through long repairs or buy an entirely new controller was a huge achievement in the beginning. However, over the past 2 years, actually finding the modules available for purchase was nearly impossible. That is, unless you bought them for over double the cost from resellers. I mean, for 2 years, there's been complaint after complaint about this, and even checking today, the issue persists. The other thing is that they introduced this technology nearly 2 years ago, so since then, there's been alternative methods that have come out to fix stick drift, and there's also been at least one copycat that I know of with the Victrix Pro BFG. The only difference is their modules are actually available, albeit more expensive because you have to buy them as a 2-set. But then there's the other anti-stick drift technology that's been widely adopted since then. Hall effect. People have speculated that Sony actually makes these thumbstick modules with the intention for them to wear down faster, causing customers to have to purchase them regularly. I don't necessarily believe that, nor know if there's any evidence behind it, but I do know that Hall effect joysticks are another counter to stick drift and pretty simple to implement. You see, the most common way controllers get stick drift is from dirt, dust, and any other debris making its way under the thumbsticks and interfering with the stick's mechanical pieces. All Hall effect is simply using magnets for those sensors, so even if dirt and debris does get in, it can't get stuck in anything to cause the drift. The technology has been around for decades at this point, mainly used in aviation, because you probably don't want your planes getting stick drift. And I don't know why it took so long for this technology to make its way to modern gaming controllers, but so many companies have now adopted this, yet Sony hasn't. And I don't think they will either. The revenue Sony makes from not only their Edge module replacements, but also selling additional standard controllers at $70 every time a gamer's breaks, it's a lot of money for them. And unless you've switched to Xbox, there's basically no knockoff PS5 controllers that actually work. So you're kind of just stuck in Sony's cycle. Now, even besides the thumbstick dilemma, even if they had Hall effect modules and they were always in stock, I still don't think they did a great job with any pro feature on this controller. I mean, to start, the trigger stops are dull, and the shortest press is still a pretty long distance. Because of how the adaptive triggers work on all PS5 controllers, you can get input on short presses on any DualSense controller. So really, this isn't adding a tactical advantage, and if you want the fastest trigger pulls, some people won't even reach the bottom of the trigger stops on the shortest setting. When you compare that to mouse clicks, the difference is insane. Scuf now on their PC controller and Xbox controller have switches that go between regular and full instant mouse clicks, which not only feel incredible to play with, but they actually offer a tactical advantage in being faster. The next thing that I think a lot of people overlook is the weight. Now, I will say that some people might prefer a heavier controller, but personally, I feel like a heavier controller makes me and my gameplay slower. It might be placebo, but when I'm gaming competitively at all, I much prefer a lighter controller. For context, a scuf Pro PS5 controller is 233 grams. The Dualsense Edge is 334. That's over 100 grams difference, and I think it's very noticeable. Even stacking it up against every pro PS5 controller I own, the Edge is the heaviest by over 30 grams. Some people people might see this as a positive because they feel like if their product is heavier, it's a higher quality. But again, in gaming, especially in the pro market, I've found that lighter is better, and I think most people agree with me on that. Now, another feature some pro PS5 controllers will include are tactical face buttons. These act similar to mouse click triggers where they have super fast presses and they're incredibly satisfying to press. But I don't think it's a big deal that the Edge doesn't have them, specifically because on controllers with paddles, you're not actually pressing the face buttons that much anyways. But that leads me to my biggest issue with the Edge. These are 10 Pro PS5 controllers, and then this is the Dualsense Edge. Do you notice anything different? Every other Pro PS5 controller has 4 paddles. I mean, this one even has 8. Out of every point that I've made about the Edge so far, the controller only having 2 paddles is the most disappointing yet. I don't care what game it is, you can always find useful functions for the 4 paddles, and it single-handedly improves your skill more than 2 paddles does. In Fortnite, you use 2 paddles for jump and edit, and then 2 more for sprinting and pickaxe. In Call of Duty, you use 2 paddles for jump and crouch, and then 2 more for reload, weapon swap, healing, whatever you want. But it's useful to have 4 paddles, and it's the standard for Pro PS5 controllers, yet Sony decided not to do that and still price the controller among the others that do have it. Now, I will say, I've talked a lot about the negatives of this controller, and rightfully so in my opinion, but there are some positives about the Edge. The biggest positive is the compatibility with the PS5 and user experience setting it up. Because it's obviously Sony making the controller for their own console, they have a super cool UI, and customizing all of your settings is a fun experience. I think the best way to describe it is it feels premium. There's no question that goes unanswered or really any issues you'll run into software-wise. And the controller's design feels the same. The sleek white and black look, the details of the button symbols texturing the touchpad and triggers, it looks amazing. It doesn't have any crazy shell designs like most other Pro controllers do, but the few options they do offer look super sleek and impressive. However, that's where my compliments end, because as a PS5 and PC gamer, I remember when I first tried to use this thing on PC and it just didn't work. For months, they blocked the controller from being used on PC for whatever reason, and finally, well after a year of the controller being out, they released a PC app to adjust the settings without needing a PS5. So as of now, 2 years after the release of this controller, it does have full compatibility with PC and you can adjust all the settings and do all that, but I do not forgive them for taking almost a year and a half to make that happen. And as mainly a PC gamer myself, I genuinely don't know why a player that mainly plays on PC would ever buy this controller, especially when the scuf Envision exists. This controller is literally the pinnacle of gaming, and it's cheaper than the Edge. I use this as my daily gaming controller, in between the custom dead zones, 4 great feeling paddles, 2 side buttons, clicky face buttons, adaptable normal triggers to instant mouse clicks, profile switching, 5 function keys, and software to set mouse scroll wheel to any button. I think this is the best controller on the planet, but it only works on PC. So when I think of a true pro controller, I think of the scuf Envision. I think of the scuf Reflex, my favorite PS5 controller. That fast action, impressive features, cutting edge, competitive controller. And that's just not the Dualsense Edge. I think the Edge does have a market. It's for more of a variety gamer that plays exclusively on PS5, doesn't try too hard in any game they play. Like, they're not the people playing ranked modes in tournaments. It's basically an upgrade for that casual gamer audience. I see the pro controller audience as those that are grinding ranked modes, playing tournaments, being competitive, and trying to play at a very high level in fast-paced games. That's why I think that as a pro controller, the Edge is just not good. It's pretty overrated. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my take. Subscribe if you enjoyed the video, consider watching another one, and thanks so much for watching.